Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reaper Wargaming podcast. This is like episode 19, I'm pretty sure. So thank you very much, everyone that's listening. Put any comments you've got in the chat. Speak to us, ask us questions. We're also going to be answering questions from out of the Discord as well. I'm joined today with two of the Primarchs in the club, Larry and Keir. Larry coming off of a tournament win, just beaming. He's like, God, how's that? We'll get into it, Larry, but God, you must have been on cloud nine all week, haven't you, Larry?
Oh yeah, that RTT just really set me over the top.
Oh God, I bet.
Some people will say it's just the faction, and that anyone could work with Custodes right now, and they'd probably not be wrong.
That's but we will get into the RTT. We'll speak to some of the winners, off that, some of those nuances in their lists, and just maybe look at how that compares to what the meta is saying it is at the moment, and what our recent tournament is, whether that matches up to what the meta is. However, what we need to do first, as we always do, is go over club news. What is happening in the world of Reaper Wargaming? We, as always, have our club nights pretty much every Monday bar one in the month, and then every single Friday we're in playing multiple games now, which is amazing. It isn't just 40k that's being played. We have Age of Sigma, we have Kill Teams, we have Blood Bowl, we also have what's it called, Horus Heresy campaign about to start, which honestly looks amazing. I wish I had Horus Heresy just to be able to be part of that, and because I'm reading it right now very intensively, I might add, and I am on book 36 right now, and I started reading it maybe around about April last year, so I'm doing a pretty good job because they are chunky books, and I don't like listening because I don't actually pay attention to anything that's being said if I'm listening to it, so I have to read them. We also have Magic the Gathering happening, small scale just now. However, soon it's going to take over, and it'll be a distant memory of a 40k club. No, I don't think that's going to happen, but it is nice to break some of our gaming up through the month with a little bit of cards. Is a little bit less stressful playing cards, and a lot less logistics for getting it to the club, especially if you're working. So we have our first draft happening on Friday, just a really chill draft, just to get ourselves started, and then hopefully if people enjoy it, we'll look at planning some more with maybe some prizes, things like that, as we get a bit deeper into drafting and get just our heads around it. But it's going to be awesome. We have a pod of 8, so 8 people coming to draft, so it's going to be awesome. Bring your best game mats along with you, and I would recommend, if you haven't already, watch a YouTube video on how to draft if you don't know how to draft, or otherwise it's going to be an interesting evening for you.
For when I inevitably draft a really bad deck and just don't want to play with it. Honestly, everyone else does that to completely matter with me. So.
I drafted one of the older collections recently without having any idea. I was like, it'll be fine, I'll just go in and draft. Honestly, it was a really, really quick experience where I did not spend a long time playing the game and just died really quickly. So I would recommend having an understanding of the deck at least a little bit before you come in. And there are some really good YouTube videos. Just literally type in drafting a murder at Karlov Manor. It will bring you up a load of stuff. And actually there is a guy called The Professor who talks about just drafting in general and how to do it, and his video is super simple, really easy to follow. So if you're coming down, or even in the future if you're wanting to draft, we'll put those videos, those YouTube links in the description below so you can get to them. And we'll also be talking about it on the Discord, so I'll put information in Discord as well. I'm like, should I put it in the Discord before the draft or after the draft? But no, that's harsh. I'll put it in before the draft.
Just for anyone listening now that's going to be doing draft stuff, the professor that Nick's talking about, his channel is called Tellurian Community College.
Yeah.
Really, really good Magic the Gathering content.
Other things that are happening, we of course cannot shut up about the Celtic Cup that is happening. Our huge GT 100-person grand tournament happening in November. It's going to be the 23rd of November and the 24th of November. We'll be hosting social events on the Friday as well. It's just going to be a great experience. Something north of the border as well, up in Scotland. For those of you that are like, oh God, everything I need to go do is down south, we have your back. So much stuff is going to be happening over that weekend as well that we've got planned. It's just super exciting for us. We can confirm that the tickets are going to go live on the 17th of March, which is 10 days away at 10 a.m. So get your fingers on the trigger. I have literally zero doubt that these tickets are going to go so fast from the amount of people that are literally, honestly, chomping at the bit to get one of these tickets, which is just amazing to see that amount of interest up in the north of the country. And there's going to be free ticket packages. So you've got your standard ticket for £60. You've got a limited edition ticket for £80, which comes with this amazing swag bag, just loads of limited edition items. And that will just like help to enhance your experience at the event and for future events. And then honestly, the best ticket that you're going to get, 150 quid, ultimate edition ticket that includes that limited edition swag bag and also includes a set of custom WTC terrain, which is worth over £100. So literally, if you get this, you're getting like money off your standard ticket anyway. So you just may as well get the ultimate edition ticket. If you want to take my advice, get the big ticket, get the full experience, and get the awesome WTC terrain. And what I'll say about the terrain as well, it's already painted. You don't even need to do anything. You just get it set up and get playing. So watch out on Discord, on our social media for that, for the Celtic Cup and for ticket information, and we'll just be spamming it. So watch out. You won't be able to miss it. Going into other news, which slides us really, really nicely into what we're going to be speaking about today, is the RTT. This weekend that has just passed, we had a RTT, which is a one-day event, which consists of 5 games. 3 games, 5 games in a day. That would be intense. No, it's 3 games, and it's essentially the highest scorer over those 3 games wins. And we have one of our winners. Well, one of our winners, the only winner, otherwise there wouldn't be a winner, here on the podcast to speak through their list. But before we do that, we'll quickly run ourselves down to number 1. We're going to start at 5th place. I don't know why we're going to start at 5th place. There might be some reason, I don't know, but we're going to start at 5th place, but no reason at all. Oh my goodness, 5th place is
what's your PayPal again, Nick?
Yeah, is Kier with the Tau Empire. And seeing as we have Kier here, do you want to quickly just go over your experience, how you felt the Tau got on? Tau's sitting in an interesting place somewhere in the middle of the park at the moment. Obviously, they've had their periods in time that everyone remembers them being crazy good, but just do you want to speak quickly over your experience of the event and also just how you felt your list went during the RTT?
I think it was a pretty positive event for me. Up until that point, I had only played 2 games on this data slate, so the list, I just kind of took a bit of everything to see kind of where stuff was at after the changes. I'm really loving the solo commander, just dropping in from Deep Strike, deleting something, and then taking 4 hazardous tests. And you maybe pick him up next turn, but something's dead. I think Tau have a lot of really good data sheets, like a lot of really good data sheets. Even for non-Tau players looking at the codex, it might just seem like codex breachers, but the book actually has quite good internal balance. Ghost Keels are amazing. Riptides are very, very good. Solo Commanders are great. Breachers are great. Even stuff like the Stealth Suit datasheet is for 60 points to get like 3 Marine bodies with stealth forward deployed that let you ingress on them for free, have a melta gun, can fall back and shoot, and move 8 inches. That's great. Like, you can't be upset about that kind of value. But yeah, I think it was a good tournament. My list was just MSU, lots of different little bits, doing actions, being all over the map. And yeah, I'd say it's a good event. Some really tough games. First game was against another Tau player who had a lot of breachers, and he absolutely played me off the board. So I took a little loss in the first round, but still scored quite highly. Second game went into Grey Knights. Was a little bit tentative because Grey Knights typically isn't a great matchup for Tau. But it was supply drop, and I knew that the middle objective was going to be there all game, so I just posted all my guns up around that from strat reserve or just peeking angles, and it was... I had a couple of alright turns of dice that just basically removed all the Grey Knights from the board. So I won that one. And then going into the last round was against Guard, which was always going to be a bit of an unknown quantity because I don't play against Guard very often. So there was some artillery, but there was a lot of other tanks as well. There was some move blocking shenanigans where I lost the infiltration war because I deployed second, so I couldn't move my transports turn 1. Bit of a traffic jam, which is part of the problem with playing such a vehicle-heavy list. But I ended up managing to pip the win with superior firepower, managing to take the day. But yeah, my opponent played really, really well. And yeah, I didn't expect to have been blocked in my deployment zone turn 1 by ratlings, but that happened. So yeah, good tournament.
Yeah, it really looks like, looking down that list of, honestly, some insanely high scoring rounds, and it's that middle mission that just knocked some of the big scorers right down and really affected. If you weren't playing that objective or that primary well, it just did not go off for you in that sort of middle round. So I think, yeah, that's really, really interesting. And then we've got in the middle there, third and fourth, we have 2 Astra Militarum players coming in third and fourth, which is pretty good. We don't see Astra Militarum that often in the club, and we haven't seen them that often at our tournaments either, to be honest. So it's pretty interesting seeing 2 coming in, Ryan Cook of the Shire Knights, and then Rich Oliver as well, coming in with 2 what looks like pretty tasty lists, pretty interesting lists. And you were saying that you went into one of the Astra Militarum players, Kier?
I did, but it was neither of these 2. I went into... Sorry.
Worth noting as well that those 2 Guard players in third and fourth were undefeated.
Yes.
And it's only the battle point differential or strata schedule. I don't know what our tiebreaker was.
Top 4 was decided by battle points.
Reddit told me Guard were terrible. Fireside
no, Guard
were amazing. I'm not sure who to believe.
It was John Anderson with some Catachans that I played against. Good game.
Great. So maybe, do we want to speak a little bit about that third place Astra Militarum list? What's in there? Kind of, what was it? What we expect from an Astra Militarum list? Larry, we had some discussions as well about just that mad hitting on 2s being so powerful, especially when you get those orders right as well.
Yeah, disclaimer, I don't know that much about Astra Militarum, but I've been impressed with them. Pretty much every game I played against them, pre and post data slate. I think they've just got so many things they can be doing. Is this a list that came in third?
Yep.
From Rich, the 95th. Yeah, he seemed like a lovely guy. Yeah,
he's a good guy.
He was playing on the table next to me in the third round. Lord Solar played Command Squad, Tank Commander, Ursula Creed. These all sound like good dash sheets. He's got a lot of infantry, so I have no idea. I'd normally expect to see a bunch of Boger and Casterkin, but he's gone double jungle fighters, 3 infantry
The jungle
squads,
fighters are
a couple of
really
heroes.
cute, man. They go up to like strength 4, AP 1 on the charge with their attacks in combat, but they scout move. So it's like a 10-man squad that scout moves for 55 points. And you can give them move and stuff like that. So you can make them really speedy.
Yeah, so I have no idea. 6 infantry squads cost the same as 3 Cascon. Sorry, 5 infantry squads cost about the same as 3 Cascon squads. I don't know what's better.
Yeah.
But obviously this guy's gone undefeated with them, so he probably knows his stuff. A couple of chimeras. I'm assuming this list must be quite good at playing primary with just that sort
of... Yeah, there's a lot of bodies.
Mechanized infantry style. And then he's got the big guns, Leavenworth Eradicators. They're pretty scary. I'm glad I didn't play against this list.
Just the one Basilisk, though. Oh, that's the only indirect in the list, apart from the mortars on the infantry squads, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it? Basilisk, got Rogaldorn.
I like that Rogaldorn, man.
They're pretty sweet. A couple of Scout Sentinels. And a Tempestus Scion squad. Yeah, really mixed bag. I can see why he scored really highly. Especially if people aren't too familiar with what Guard do.
Yeah.
Because, like we said, it's not a faction we often see at the club, so if you're not kind of prepared for their tricks with resurrecting and stuff and just the insane buffs they can put on the units via orders, just how fast they are with moves. Yeah, I can see it catching a lot of people out, obviously. Hugely well played by Rich to go undefeated.
Yeah, 100%. And just looking at the list is I feel you just get a prize for being able to transport all of those models and play within the time limit alone. Being
a 100-point game as well, round 1. So really, really noteworthy. 100-point game, perfect game. Yeah.
And then going into that second list, really interesting that the 2 lists are quite different. The second list is very, very vehicle and way more vehicle heavy in its design. Lots of indirect going on there as well. That indirect hitting on 2s for that indirect?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, 100%. Guard is just one of those factions that sort of slides quite under the radar. So a lot of people maybe haven't really played that much against Guard. I think Drukhari right now are quite similar. If they get played, we didn't see any at the RTT, which was quite interesting. And Genestealer Cult, less so now because they got played quite a lot at the beginning, but they were another one of these factions that just didn't get played a lot. So when people came up against them, there was also that, oh my goodness, I do not know what these people or this army is going to do to me, and can really catch people off guard, which is why it's good to learn about at least the basics of every faction, everyone. So honestly, if there isn't enough for you to do, please now go and learn all factions of Warhammer and all their intricate rules.
I got some really good advice going into a tournament once from someone who said, because it was when I was coming back to 10th and I hadn't played an event in months. And they said, okay, well, the tournament's 3 weeks away. There's 20-something factions. Just read an index a night. Just read the stratagems, read the die sheets. It takes you half an hour just to skim through them. But yeah, there's so many factions where if you don't know what they're up to, they'll just smash you.
Yep.
Even if your opponent explains at the start of the game, I can do this. By the time they've reeled off 10 things their list can do, you're not going to remember all that.
No.
And they're not obliged to remind you when you walk face first into it, 4 turns later. So.
No, 100%. And that's that thing. It's your brain only holds around about 7 pieces of information that you're given at one time. So being able to hold all that information is difficult when you're just being told right there and then, especially when you are stressed or at least a little bit anxious about playing. You're probably not really listening to what they're saying. And one thing that I would say is if you want to be a good competitive player, you need to know all the armies. And yeah, there's a lot, but that's just part and parcel of being a good competitive player, that you understand at least what stratagems they might pull out, why they might pull them out against you. And you've got to learn that. That's just part and parcel of being a competitive Warhammer player. And then the other thing is one thing that I watched that I felt was just such good advice was, it's not about asking them, just reel through what it is your army do and tell me. It's about having very specific questions that you need to know that would either stop you from being able to play the way that you need to play. So asking stuff like, do you have anything that can drop easily inside 9 inches, all of these like small questions being useful bits of information. And it's about what is useful information for you to know, for you to be able to compete, and rather than just saying, okay, just tell me what your army does or what this faction does or whatever. So all these little nuances, and there's some great videos out there and there's some great players in the club that I'm more than happy to just chat through how to prepare for competitive play as well. So we also have Samuel Norton Alexander coming in second place, hot with Tau. I'm assuming this was your mirror match there as well.
Round one opponent. Yeah,
yes.
Sam. He's got Tau good stuff, I would say. He has 3 Devilfish. He's got 4 squads of Breachers, 2 squads of Pathfinders, the Kroot Farstalkers, which are like forward deploying Kroot. They do like a little bit of shooting and a little bit of fighting, but realistically they forward deploy and scout move, and they're 70 points, so you take them, that'll be good. 2 Riptides, because Riptides are... I've found Riptides in the past to be too inconsistent, but now that other stuff is less good, you can kind of allocate your Tetras to spot for them and not feel bad about it. And with Tetra support, they're really good.
Okay.
Because they're so much more consistent.
So what does that do? So what do they do?
Tetras, when they guide a target, I'm not going to go over guiding entirely, but for those of you who know, when you guide a target with Tetras, Tetras give ignores cover because they have mark next keyword, but also full rerolls to hit as well as +1 ballistic skill. So you can be really consistent, especially when your 6s start exploding twice when you're guided. You're expecting hit on 3s with full rerolls and sustain 2. You're expecting like 7 out of 6 hits with normal dice, or 8 out of 6 hits. So yeah, they can get really good, and they're AP 3 damage 4 with their Ion, which is sensational. So they're really good for 165 points. You really can't complain about them anymore. Although I will say that they should have better rules and also be more points and cost more points, because it's silly that the massive underslung ion gun is the same strength as the tiny plasma rifle on the model's shoulder.
That's fair.
So, topping off the list, weighing in at about 525 points of the list is a 6-man of Crisis Suits with a Cold Star. I don't like them so much anymore. I think they're a little bit overcosted for what they do, but Sam ran them to great effect in our game with 10 melta guns, essentially, and 5 plasma guns on the suits, and then 4 plasma guns on the commander. Then he had a solo commander and Darkstrider. Darkstrider leads the Pathfinders and gives 12-inch deep strike deny, so really, really handy in a lot of matchups.
Oh, amazing. So, then finally, what we have in first place is our very own Larry coming in with the Custodes. Do you want to sort of speak a little bit through your list, kind of what your game plan was coming in with this list, and then maybe just take us through each of your games, Larry? Would be quite, I think, really interesting to know what your thought process going into each of the matchups was.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, the list is fairly straightforward. I just copy-pasted the list Ep.19 won the Northampton Super Major with 2 weeks ago and ran that. It's pretty nuts. So it's 6 blocks of Custodes infantry. There's 3 Warden squads. They're the guys that, if you're stronger than them, they're -1 to be damaged, and once per game, they get a 4-up feel no pain for a full phase. If there's a character, they only get the -1 to be wounded if there's a character leading them, but there always is. And then 3 squads of Custodian Guard. Those are the guys that reroll 1s to wound, and if you're holding an objective with them, they reroll all their wounds, so they're quite fighty. All these squads have banners in them, so the guys are OC3. The Custodian Guard squads have guys with shields and swords in them, so they're pistol and assault, so you can basically always do actions with them. Don't think that came up once, maybe, over the 3 games, but sure, it was an extra 3 points or 2 points for cleansing something I couldn't have otherwise cleansed. or maybe deploying a homer. I can't remember. I remember thinking I only ever used that once, but I felt quite good having the shields because the sword and shield guys have 4 wounds. And yeah, I think flat 3 damage weapons kind of prey on Custodes a bit. So yeah, 6 blocks of infantry, 1 squad of prosecutors. Those are just the sort of 40-point Sisters of Silence with bolt guns. I think they scored me net negative points. Yeah, they scored me net like negative 9 points at the weekend. They were awful. Literally, I started them in reserve and literally never drew investigate signals or engage on all fronts or behind enemy lines when they were off the board. And the only time they had any effect on the scoring was when my opponent killed them for no prisoners or purge the foe to kill 1 on the primary for round 3. So I'm not sure you can take them out. I think you need them there, but they weren't great. But they're only 40 points, whatever. And then 4 characters, so 3 blade champions. Those are the guys that let squads reroll their advances and reroll their charges. And once per game, the squad they're leading can advance and charge. So although your units are very slow, move 6. Basically, the entire army moves 6. Those guys give you a bit of speed, a bit of pressure. And the last unit in the list was Trajan Valoris, who's just great. He's got a couple of nice abilities, but he's really there for his passive ability. Him and the squad he's leading ignore all modifiers, so they ignore negatives to hit, they ignore negatives to move and advance from guards, artillery fire, they ignore Catan or other units reducing their damage or halving their damage, that sort of thing. So then basically, yeah, you just stick a character in each of the warden squads, and then stick a Trajan in one of the bigger guard squads. I think every mission, my game plan was, I'm going to stick a bunch of Custodes infantry on all 3 midfield objectives and hope my opponent can't kill them. And then if they got close to me, I would charge them. And I wish it was more complicated than that, but shamelessly, it really wasn't. I think they're pretty good for the mission pack we played, just because it was round 1 is what, Dawn of War. It's like priority targets, so it's really hard to get a primary differential on priority targets because you get 5 or 10 points and you score for holding your home objective. So the only real way to get a differential is control all 3 midfield objectives. So I did that. I just advanced 3 squads of wardens onto the midfield. My opponent stuck on 5 primary, I get 10. Round 2 was the one where the objectives disappear. On round 4 and 5, supply drop. And again, just have units on midfield objectives, just score those points, deny your opponent primary. And then last round, same idea, purge the foe. You're always building up this primary advantage. Even if your secondary scoring isn't amazing because your units are so slow, you're just miles ahead on primary, and that was kind of the game plan. So yeah, very, very blunt instrument. I think anyone can pick up this faction and have a shot with them.
Next muted.
Sorry, classic.
Yeah.
I don't hear that enough at work. You think I'd learned by now, but did you go fixed secondaries or tactical?
I went tactical just because Custodes, they're very... So your units are very basic, right? You have 5 squads of 5 guys, 1 squad of 4 guys. They're all the same. They're all strength 7, 5 attacks, AP 2 damage, 2 in melee. They're all toughness 6, 3 wounds, 2 up, 4 up on the save. But what you do have access to is you have a lot of once per game abilities, like once per game this unit shoots twice, or once per game this unit gets a 4 up heal no pain. Once per game this unit advances and charges. But you also have some incredible stratagems. 1 CP bring a guy back to life, 2 CP fight first on an objective, 2 CP your opponent gets -1 damage against you. 1 CP sticky an objective. There's just 1 CP +1 to wound monsters and vehicles.
That's huge. That's
strats are wild,
absolutely massive.
So, but they're really CP hungry. So yeah, just for that reason, I always went tactical. There was a couple of games where I was probably in the tank, like, against Chaos Knights in round 3. I was like, yeah, I should really be thinking about taking Bring It Down and, I don't know, Cleanse here. But I thought, no, I'll just go tactical, the CP, especially against that army, because again, I am not an expert. I could just be completely wrong here. But looking at the profiles that scare you, it's a lot of stuff that deals 3 damage. So if you have CP to spend on -1 damage, on top of your Feel No Pain, on the Warden squads, yeah, and you just think I'm spending, like, I want to be spending in the key turns of the game. Like, turn 1, you just get into position with a bunch of units, and then on turn 2, you probably could realistically spend 4 CP. So, and then be spending 4, and then 2 the next turn, and then 2 the next turn. So yeah, having tactical to just farm CP really.
And then, so your first game was into Jamie Fowler, and he was playing, if I can even find it, he was playing Necrons. So how did
Yeah,
that go?
Hypercrypt. Yeah, his list was quite interesting. It wasn't the sort of misery fest of a monolith and wraiths and tons of immortals and whatever else. It was quite a bit more MSU, and there was only one Catan, which was a relief for me, because I think Catan are what Custodes struggle with, just because you have Trajan, who ignores their damage modifier, and Trajan's squad will just pick up a Catan. No questions asked, rapid ingress them, charge the Catan instead. But the second Catan, that's on the other side of the board from Trajan, real problem. So, yeah, only having one Catan was a bonus. I don't think the monolith's amazing against Custodes. So him not having a monolith meant he had more points for sort of more MSU units, and he had a respectable number of wraiths. He wasn't just running out, spamming 18 of them. But I think Custodes are just pretty decent into Necrons in the beginning. And going first on Dawn of War meant he ended up having units in range for me to, if he wanted to contest anything, he was having to let Warden squads with Blade Champions advance and charge him. And I'm perfectly happy playing basically the entire game in his deployment zone. They get a bit dicey towards the end. Like, I think I maybe still had, 1,400 points on the board or something. And he was down to, sort of 3 models. But they were 3 models that could teleport around the board every turn. I was like, oh, well, these 3 models are going to score him 20 points a turn. So it ended up being, it wasn't, despite the first 2 turns being really violent in my favor. Yeah, he was a really, really good player. Yeah, definitely kind of maximized his scoring, but I think there weren't enough of the really sort of ultra nasty Catan data sheets to kind of pressure the Custodes. Anything I touched tended to die pretty quickly.
Okay. And then our second game going into a winner of a previous tournament as well, Chris Chung, coming in with the Ultramarines. How was that? What was your game plan here?
Oh, I was gutted when I got paired into Chris, because he's obviously just one of the best players in the room, and he knows that Vanguard Ultramarine list inside out. In hindsight, if I'd actually read the tournament pack and thought about the mission we were playing, it shouldn't have been such a worry. Sorry, excuse me, just got a bit of a sore throat. The round 2 mission is supply drop, which is where there are 3 objectives in the middle, and they start disappearing. One disappears in turn 4, one disappears in turn 5, and he's playing the Vanguard Ultramarines list with the huge brick of aggressors. He's got the big brick of teleporting Devastator Centurions. He's got some scouts. They got hit pretty hard by the balance data slate, so he's only got 3 units of 3 Plasma Inceptors now, instead of having like 12 or 15 of them. So, although the damage 3 is nice into Custodes, whereas I would have been really worried about a 6-man unit of them coming down and shooting me, I'm not worried about a 3-man they pick up one, maybe two guys, and then they just die. So, I think he got a bit unlucky with some of his tactical cards early game. Was forced to. I think I got good secondary cards the first turn. He got bad secondary cards the first turn. So then on turn 2, if he drew, I don't know, behind enemy lines on something, so he felt pressured to drop units into my deployment zone. And because of my turn 1, I just advanced my 3 units of wardens onto all the midfield objectives. Yeah, he was forced to have his go turn maybe a turn earlier than it felt like he wanted, and it was just the same kind of plan as game 1, just get these wardens. Yeah, he's got the firepower to kill a squad a turn, but some of these objectives only
last for
he can't shoot me turn 1 because of line of sight, so he kills a squad on turn 2, and objectives start disappearing after turn 3, so I think I just put way too much pressure on the primary, and again, so the secondary cards drew in my favour, so always, very tough opponent, but the mission, I think, just lined up. I don't know whether it was just luck on the day or whether that mission, it feels like that mission and matchup was just absolutely horrific for those Ultramarines. So.
Yeah. And then finally we went into Shane Frost. We had Chaos Knights. So it was a pretty wide array of different armies you played into throughout the whole event. Kind of like a Horde reanimating army into a sort of Space Marines army, which is, you could think, sort of middle size, medium size, and then you've got a very elite army of basically just big old knights and war dogs. How was the Chaos Knight matchup?
Yeah, thankfully, I'd literally not played against Chaos Knights all edition until the weekend before this RTT. One of my friends wanted to get a game, and he was running Chaos Knights, so I got to actually see their stratagems and action, and got to appreciate just how much damage carnivores actually do in melee. So, yeah, Shane was a great guy. His list seemed pretty solid. Obviously, he was undefeated going into round 3 as well. But again, I wish I had a more interesting story to tell about my genius strategic mastermind play, but it was just, there's 3 objectives, I'm gonna put 3 warden squads on all the objectives, and can my opponent kill them? Probably not. I think Chaos Knights can have a good crack at it, but the primary being purge the foe. They're never killing more, ever. They're lucky if they get kill 1. For a couple of turns, and then maybe there'll be a turn where they kill the unit and the attached character to kill 2, but I've probably already killed at least 2 of his dogs in that battle round to keep that even. Those prosecutors came down and gave him a kill point. He's got 10 indirect missile launchers, havoc launchers, whatever they're called, the missile pods that are up in the baby knights. So picking up my toughness 3 infantry wasn't a problem for them.
And you
but yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, you keep talking about you wish there was something more interesting to say about your sort of tactical play, all of that kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, the simplicity of it is what makes it such a good tactical play as well. And then it's also, for me, it's that confidence to know your army so well that you can say, I'm going to just stick them on these objectives, and this is what they're going to do. Because I think sometimes you can feel pressure into making stuff more complicated or more fancy than it needs to be, or going into combat for no reason, just because you feel like you need to potentially be doing something. And that in itself is just a sort of a maturity when it comes to competing a little bit there as well.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, that there were a couple of turns where I was like, oh, actually, that was quite nice. That was quite a nice play. Thankfully, I mean, I can't say I've got any sort of experience with Custodes, really. I think last time I was on the pod, we were chatting about the balance data state,
Mhm.
and I said, "Oh, I've played with and against Custodes on TTS a bit. They seem really good. I'm going to take them to the RTT." So, you know, a month ago I wasn't even a Custodes player. But I played enough games with them online and a couple of games in person to, you know, I had a feel for it. But playing Grey Knights beforehand, because it's the same, you know, defensively it's a very similar profile.
Yeah.
Terminator is 2 up, 3 wounds. But yeah, a couple of nice things you can do with them, like the resurrect a guy, you know, because a lot of these missions, the middle objective's out in the open. You can't sit behind a rune and be on the objective, but you can sit one guy on the objective, hold it, force your opponent to make an inefficient move to engage that squad, and sure, if they shoot it with, you know, some las cannons or some of those, what is it, demon breath spears on the war dogs, they'll kill one guy. So you take him off as a casualty, and then in your command phase, you just resurrect him back onto the objective. All of a sudden, your squad's at full strength, you're not taking battle shock, you're scoring that objective, getting that primary. You've increased your charge range, your threat range, because you get to resurrect that model 2 inches forward, and the bases are like 1.5 inches wide. So, little things like that copied over from Grey Knights. And yeah, I think just having again, it's not super complicated, but just realizing that Custodes' primary game is so strong, and there are so many factions that you just completely no-sell on the, you know, you set 5 wardens and a character on an objective, what are they going to do? You've got 18 OC, you probably fight first. You'll delete most things that touch you. So yeah, it was a good list. And yeah, I think I played them as well as I could have.
Good.
But the ceiling's not very high, you know?
No, I think you talk yourself down, and a win is a win. However, you need to play an army to get it. That is the way that it is with competitive play. And that kind of goes nicely into some of our questions, our podcast questions. If you're on the Discord, we always look to just answer any of your questions. If you're not on the Discord, why not? Get on it, join. Honestly, if you need anything answered about any faction ever, like, you're going to get a reply in around about a minute, because the Discord is so active all the time that I can't even keep up with not having just like bold channels non-stop all the time. So that first question that I'm going to ask, and apologies, Odie, as you've already played the tournament, but his question is just advice for someone taking part in their first tournament, and maybe just like one really key thing that you would suggest someone does. And I think for me, my one would be have a list of questions ready that you're going to ask your opponent about their army and what they do, and that list of questions is based on stuff that will stop you being able to do the things that you want to do with your army to score points or to score secondaries. So that would be my one, just kicking it off. I'll come over to Kier.
Sorry, my connection was a bit funny. Is it for the advice for someone taking part in the first tournament?
Yes, it is.
Know your list. Just know your list. Like, to be honest, we were talking a lot earlier about learning all different indices. Like, if it's your first tournament, just worry about knowing what your list does. You don't even need to learn your whole index, just the units you're going to do. Don't worry too much about your opponent's like damage output is something people really stress over. But like, if you ask somebody what their profiles are and you aren't like, if that's new information and you have a lot of that to learn, I wouldn't even bother. I would just say, do they do a lot of damage?
And Larry?
Yeah, I suppose the difference between first tournament and like third tournament, but it's probably quite similar to what Kier was saying. Know what your own models do, but also know how you plan on winning the game. Like, the tournament pack is made available to you weeks in advance of any tournament. You can see what all the missions are. Just read those primaries. Think about the secondary cards you might draw. Think about where, because usually on UKTC terrain, and probably WTC terrain as well, the boards are set up in such a way that you'll have a better. There'll be one side of the board that's like your safe side or your expansion, to use a StarCraft term. And just look at the maps and think, okay, well, I'm going to deploy my units here. And on turn one, this squad, these squads, or this tank, or whatever, is going to move here to hold this objective. And I'm going to fight my opponent over this, and I'm going to concede this other part of the board. Just have a very basic game plan going into every mission. And you don't need, and that doesn't need you to know the ins and outs of what your opponent's list does or what they're trying to do to counter you. Just have some basic idea in your mind of how are you actually going to score points. And just try and put that into practice, rather than, you don't want to just be making plays on the fly, turn by turn, just, oh, this will shoot this, because it can. Think about where you want to move your units. I think the game is mostly won or lost in the movement phase, rather than in the shooting or fight phase,
Yeah, that's fair. So going into some of our other questions, one of the questions I'm going to hold off for just now answering this question, because I think it's going to make for a potentially really good podcast. And that's your question, Sam, around the Primarch tier list. I think we don't have enough time for us to get into the amount of detail that I think we could get into about doing a tier list for the Primarchs. So we haven't forgotten about that question, Sam, but we're going to hold it because I think it is going to make for a theme in itself for us to talk about. So we're going to hold that one. And I know Kira's like, yes.
Yeah. I've got strong opinions on this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, strong opinions.
And I have...
It's Vulcan number one.
Vulcan number one. I'm fair. I'm with you. I've just read, honestly, small tangent, the sort of unofficial Vulcan trilogy through the Horus Heresy. Unbelievable. It's so good. Read it. But going into other questions, we've got most memorable games for host. And for host, was it a win, a loss, a wash, or a tight game? I'll maybe do mine really quickly first, because I know they're listening in the podcast, but it was a brutal game when GNC the Cult were extremely broken at the start of 10th edition against our president, Dave, and Keir was there.
Oh God. Oh,
it was brutal, where I didn't lose any units whatsoever, so didn't actually even need to do any of my rolls to see if anything came back, which it would have come back for free anyway without me even needing to roll. But it was a brutal game.
I've never seen him. Sorry, Dave.
But that would be my most memorable game, because I just felt like, I'm sorry, man, like, that's not done anything the whole time. But that's my one. Kier.
I don't know about most memorable game, but I saw somebody asking, I think it was Gordy down the sort of thread about most memorable dice roll. My most memorable sequence was when we were playing years ago back at Third Pillar, and Matthew, who plays Death Guard, he charged me. I was playing Tau at the time, charged my broadsides with his Death Shroud Terminators. So 3 Death Shroud went into my 2 broadsides. The Death Shroud did no damage, and my broadsides just turned around and killed the Terminator, which was so unlikely.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I was like, yeah, next turn I'm going to shoot them in combat.
No.
The rest of the squad. And that was after he made like a 9 or maybe even a slightly longer than that charge, because I might have pushed him back with the screen too. Or actually, you know what's a very memorable dice roll from my game at the weekend, the RTT, was played against Gregory's Grey Knights. I'd put my Ghost Keel in a corner, search and destroy deployment, but it forward deploys. So I put it in a corner, and I went first. I said, right, I'm going to scooch this Ghost Keel, and it's like 17.5 inches away from you, because I can shoot my big melter gun at your strike squad for free, because it's blown up. And if you really think you can manage like an 11-inch charge turn 1, just go for it. And if you get in, you get in. I'm not going to stress about it. And he fucking rolled an 11. So he rolled a 12. He rolled boxcars in the charge, and I was like, brilliant.
You can't.
Bro, I worked the Ghost Keel. There's no damage.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
it. It's all swings and
But yeah,
roundabouts.
literally, yeah.
Larry,
Is this favorite game or
either
favorite dice roll?
dice roll
Okay.
game.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Favorite, is it most memorable or
Yeah.
favorite? Because most memorable, probably a game I had it was just 2021 LGT 20 London Grand Tournament, probably 2021 because it must have been like just off the back of COVID. This was like one of my first ever real life 40k tournaments, you know. And playing Grey Knights, they're completely broken at the time. Fair play, you know. They're just a very good faction. But this was, you know, playing a bunch of these TTS tournaments online during lockdown, and then you start reading all these Goonhammer articles and watch all these YouTube videos about, oh, LGT this and UKTC that. You're like, oh, wow, I'm going down to the big side to play with the big boys. And, you know, Steam and Box is there, and then this is there, and you're like, I've listened to these guys on podcasts before. Yeah, they're pretty good at Warhammer. And then you start playing, it's just regular people you're playing against, right? Like, so however many 100-person event, chances are you're just going to be playing across the table from a very well-adjusted, nice, normal human being who's just there to throw some dice with you. But I can't remember, it must have been like round 2 or 3, I came across a guy that instantly, I was just like, ooh, you look like you play Magic. Just that, like, just the vibe you get, just like, oh, just the chat he was giving, the super confidence, like really kind of smug aura he was giving off, and I was like, oh, this is not going to be a good game. And it wasn't, you know, he was just like a bit pushy, and he was massive angle shooting, like, you know, the way the terrain was set up. There were literally, like, back at this must have been 9th edition. Like it must have been early 9th. There are just these gaps between ruins that a night base literally can't fit through. You know, there was none of this. You can walk over terrain as if it's not there. And he was like, oh, I'm moving my knight around here. Even if you tell me I can't, I'm just doing it anyway. And by this point, I was just like, what an arse, you know. And it was a really close game. And I probably should have beaten him. I think the match was for me. My list was pretty broken. This was like pre-nerf Grey Knights, that edition. But I let this guy get inside my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my one loss all weekend. I went 4-1 at my first LGT. I absolutely crushed it.
Amazing.
And this one guy, I was just like, that's the only thing I took away from that weekend, was this one guy, like, not bullying me at the table, but, you know, just being a bit of a dick. And I was like, okay, I'm literally never going to let that happen again. So,
right.
I think you hear all these horror stories about, oh, I don't want to go to 40k tournaments. What if you run into one of these kind of people that will just, you know, not play in the spirit of the game and try and win at all costs and stuff. But running into that guy and just like, as the game went on, just being like, no, look, I'm sorry. I'm going to, you know, you're just trying to cheat. That's not how these rules work. And just having that kind of a conversation with him and just realizing that it's not a big deal just to call someone out on their bullshit. It just makes the game, going into every game with that kind of confidence, to just be like, yeah, look, everyone's going to make mistakes, but I'm not just going to let people get away with stuff, whether accidentally or, you know, everyone makes mistakes, right? You know, take backs happen, and, you know, yeah, sure, let your opponent rewind if you had a discussion and one you misunderstood something. But this guy was like, he'd gone well beyond the line of what was acceptable, and I remember thinking, right, that's it, lesson learned, and it's the most valuable lesson I think I ever learned in 40k. Never mind all the strategy guides and battle reports, and just realizing that, you know, as long as you're sharp and willing to stand up for yourself, like, I don't know how many percentage points that increases your win rate by, but yeah, just I hate this idea that people don't enjoy this game or even lose matches or lose points in a tournament standing because they feel they can't just stand up to someone and be like, whoa, sorry, no, you played that incorrectly. I'm not accusing you, but we both know that you know that I know that you're at it. That kind of thing. So yeah, not the most upbeat, most memorable game.
No.
But it is literally my most memorable.
Yeah, I know Kier is on the dark web right now looking for you. No, but I think that's a memorable game for a different reason. That's a memorable game because it taught you a way of Like, it just taught you what you should do in those situations, and you were basically like, I'm never going to be like that again. I won't let someone get away with that. And if someone like that matches into you the first round, think about the knock-on effect that will have in the next rounds he plays, that they maybe won't be like that because you called them out on it. They might be like, well, okay, I can't do this for the other rounds.
And if these people don't get called out, they'll just try it again on their next opponent and their next opponent. Yeah, I think it's just, everyone's there to play this toy soldiers at the end of the day, that's kind of a bit of a cliche, but yeah, just these people tend not to, they're not going to put up a fight when they get called out on it. They know they're in the wrong. So.
Okay, so we're nearing the end. Another great episode. Thank you both for coming on. We're going to end with just one more question, and that question is, what is your proudest hobby moment and your biggest hobby regret? So I think for me, my proudest hobby moment is my Angron that I painted, and it took me honestly like a month to paint it, but I think he looks awesome. I love the basin that I've done with him, with skeletons crawling out of like a blood river. And one day I will actually finish painting all of the World Eaters, but we could be in 13th edition by the time I finish painting the army. Not because there's lots of models to paint, but just because of how freakingly slow I am painting single models at the moment. So if you are looking for someone to paint a full army for you, do not ever ask me. But biggest hobby regrets? I'm a massive hobbyist in general. I don't really have any hobby regrets at all. I love hobbying. I love learning new stuff. I will get hyper fixated on anything if you allow me to, which is what my hyperfixation right now being Magic the Gathering, which I'm now fully obsessed with, and it will absorb my obsession for however long it will do. But yeah, I don't really regret anything in hobby, and I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing way to meet people and to learn new stuff and just sort of expand your horizons a little bit. And yeah, I just think it's amazing. So hobby more. That is my my advice. And do stuff that you're like, oh, I think that would be interesting, but I wouldn't know anyone or anything. Just do it. You'll meet people at it. Just go along and learn to kayak or sew or make pottery or whatever you fancy. You think you want to do it, just go and do it. That's mine. Kira.
Biggest thing I'm really chuffed with. I will say, to be honest, my Thousand Suns paint job is way better, technically, than my Tau paint job, because my Tau paint job technically is actually kind of sloppy. But I get a fuck ton of compliments on the scheme. And people always say, I love your pink Tau, they're really cute. So I'm pretty chuffed with them. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's so many to choose from. I think if I was put on a spot, I'd say, yeah, I'm pretty chuffed that people think my Tau army is really interesting to look at.
Yeah, great.
Biggest hobby regret, probably getting into 40k. Because obviously once I got into 40k, I had to stop showering. Had to stop any romance in my life as well. It's part of the rules.
Yeah.
Stop wearing deodorant, stop brushing my teeth.
Yeah. Only drink Monster.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, to be honest, one of my biggest hobby regrets was not doing fucking Magnets before now. Not Magnus. I've always wanted the Magnus strain. Magnets. I've not done any Magnets until quite late in my career, so a lot of my boys are glued together. And
Larry. Oh, you're on mute now. Oh, it's been a night of mutes.
As always.
As anyone that knows me knows, I'm not a huge hobbyist. My most recent hobby moment was, as of Thursday evening, the entire Custodes list was still grey plastic. They were fully painted, taking first place on the Saturday, so that was nice. A busy Friday, getting literally 2,000 points painted up. Hobby regret. Oh, when I was a kid, I found some like Rogue Trader era, you know, like the really old school metal Space Marines and Chaos Marines, up like a car boot seal or something. A box full of them, and they all just ended up going in the bin one time. Like just tidy up my room. Like, oh, I'm never going to use these.
Oh, God.
They're worth horrific amounts of money on eBay now, and the models are really sweet. So yeah, that's got to be my biggest regret.
Honestly, I think we all have that regret when it comes to like Pokemon cards, because honestly, the older Pokemon cards are worth so much crazy money right now that it pains me even to think of those cards and where they could possibly be. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you anyone who has just listened through all of the major streaming sites, YouTube, Spotify, we're everywhere, you know. Just take a listen, enjoy, comment below. We love hearing your comments. Join the Discord. Everything is down in the description to allow you to do that. If you are in Scotland, visiting Glasgow, live in Glasgow, and you're like, oh, I really want a place to be able to game with like-minded people, join Reaper. Come along. All you need to do is book a table and you can literally play anything in the club. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be 40k. We have loads of different things going on in the club all the time, loads of different game systems. So it's literally just a space for you to be able to come along and have room to be able to play any size game, from big sprawling games to small games. It's all there. It's all available. And look out next on the 17th, which is Sunday next, not this Sunday coming up, but the following Sunday, for the grand tournament and tickets dropping. That's our big grand tournament happening in November. 100-person north up in Scotland. Come along to it. Be there or be square. All right. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you again in a couple of weeks' time when we record again. So thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.